Hi there, it's Professor Monty, and let's look at odd and even nth roots. Now, recall, if we go from an even root to an odd power, we have to put an absolute value. And I put in unless otherwise stated because some problems will say, assume no variables started as negative or something to that effect. All right, so let's look at the sixth root of x to the sixth. Remember, we're looking for something to the sixth power that equals this radicand, this x to the sixth. Well, that's just x. So my answer here is just going to be x. But we started with an even power. We ended with an odd power, 1. So it's the absolute value of x. That's my answer, is the absolute value of x. The sixes cancel, but I get an absolute value. So I went from an even root to an odd power. All right, let's try this one. Again, same idea. I'm looking for something cubed that is a cubed. Well, that's just a. Oh, I went from an odd power to an odd root. I don't need the absolute value. This is just going to be a. That's my answer. A. I don't need to do the absolute value. And it's wrong if I do an absolute value, because if I started with, say, a -1 cubed, I'd get -1. The cube root of -1 is -1. It didn't change to positive. So be careful about that. All right, similarly, again, what to the fourth is going to be 7b to the fourth. That's pretty hard, 7b. But again, even power, odd power, absolute value of 7b. Now, in fact, we can go one step further. The absolute value of 7 is just 7. So some teachers will let you leave it there. Some want you to go 7 times the absolute value of b. So either of these. I'm going to box this one. It's kind of a mess right there. But to show, hey, that's kind of the final answer, that would be okay. But that's a better answer, possibly. Okay, now a little bit harder. First of all, I've got an odd root. I'm looking for something to the fifth power, which is -32x to the fifth. I know the x part. That's pretty simple. Wait, and I know I can put in a negative, because a negative to the fifth is still negative. But this 32 is kind of messy. Let's see what makes up that 32. So I'm doing a trick where I divide by prime numbers. 2 goes into this 16 times, 2 goes into that 8 times, 2 goes into that 4 times, and 2 goes into that twice. So 32 is really 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, or 2 to the fifth. That means if I put a 2 in here and raise it to the fifth, I'm going to get to 32. The negative stays negative, the 2 to the fifth is 32, and the x to the fifth is the x to the fifth. That's my answer. So this comes out -2x. That's my answer there. And I can check that by raising that to the fifth, make sure I get this. So you can always check it that way. Again, I started with an odd power, so I'm not going to need absolute values. Again, it would be wrong if I used absolute values. So try these. There's stuff going on that we have to remember. When do I use absolute value? When do I don't? Just remember that recall that I have up there. And then just practice these. That's the only way you're going to get better, is practicing. But they'll become simpler, you'll become faster, and you'll be able to get